everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cryptocurrent. Your host here, Richard Carthon. And today I have a special guest all the way out in Berlin working on a protocol that you need to know more about. I'm excited myself to learn more about. We have Ingo with KILT. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Well, excited to learn more about you and learn more about this amazing project you have going on. But before we do, let's learn more about you. Can you give us some background on yourself?
Yeah, so of course, I'm Ingo. I'm a computer scientist. I'm from Germany. I also studied in Germany. In the 90s of the last century, I had my first startup quite a while ago. After selling the startup, I did something pretty unusual. I went into industry and worked for companies like Axel Springer, which you might have heard of, which is a big publisher, and also Burda, which is also quite big international company, was the CTO there. And one of the things that you do as a CTO is basically report to the group board and say, here's a brand new technology coming up, please look at it. And this is how I made it into blockchain, basically, because I told those guys at Burda there's something important there. And then they said, okay, if it's so important, then we need a company for it. Who's going to run it? You can do that. And here I am.
Amazing. So just give us a timeline on that. So you first learned about blockchain, talking through industry, having some conversations. Around what year was that?
I think it was 2015, and it was in Austin, Texas, actually. It was of course, and there were some people from the Ethereum core team having a speech there, and I sat there because I heard about Bitcoin, but I was never really interested in that, and I said, yeah, let's learn something about that, and that was completely amazing for me because I started noticing that this thing is going to change the world completely because it is applicable basically to everything out there, not only your personal life and not only finance, but also any type of industry. And so the power of the smart contract was actually what got me. And that was pretty amazing. And since then, I'm into blockchain.
No, that's great. And it's good to have that background context. I mean, the fact that you've been in it for almost 6 years, about to be 7, and as you go through this industry, we've seen the waves, the ups and downs, and just how much it has evolved and things are being continued to be built on top. It's interesting that smart contracts is what really drew you in. For me, when I first learned about crypto back in early 2018, and I first learned about Bitcoin and Ethereum. Ethereum captured my attention for the same reasons, for the fact that it was more of a platform with things being built on top. So when you were looking at blockchain protocol and just even observing what KILT is, it looks like it is meant to be something that other things are built on top of. So can you just explain, what was the thesis behind KILT and what made you want to create this company?
Yeah, coming from industry, you think maybe a little bit different than coming straight from university. When you come straight from university, you want to change the world all over. And when you come from industry, you think of applications and how you could actually apply a technology to a given use case. And this is what drove us in the beginning and still driving us. So we were looking at, okay, there's this beautiful technology. What is it good for? And the answer was, when we started in January 2018, the answer was even harder than it is today. It was like, yeah, you can have Bitcoins, and then you can have smart contracts, but smart contracts they're just small pieces of software when you look at them closer. And there was no industry adoption. And we thought, okay, industry adoption is going to take a while, which is normal. When you look at the internet, it also took quite a decade or two until industry started using this thing. But then the question is, what will the first part, where will it happen first? And this is probably where it is needed most. And we looked at how digital identity is actually being produced in the internet of today, in Web 2 we call that. And this is completely wrong. And it's so much worse than the non-digital identity that we have. I can explain that later if you want. And that actually is a step back. So we're digitizing and we're doing it worse than we did it before. And it seems that the internet is in a way constructed the way that it always goes in this wrong direction. And this is where we still think that the first adoption of industry will actually happen. So this is why we said, okay, let's work in digital identity.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a great point. And even with announcements like Facebook going to changing its names to Meta and the switch to the future, which is the metaverse, and a lot of these different companies starting to stem up and have some initial success with that kind of announcement, it becomes even more. It's more important that we continue to keep our identities private, even as we think about living in a COVID world with having to show proof of vaccination and everything else. Identity is becoming more and more and more a necessity, especially our digital identity. So as we think through that process, how is it that KILT is uniquely going after to help solve that challenge?
Yeah, well, we looked at it quite a long time, and the idea was look at what we have in the physical world. In the physical world, we have when you talk about identity, actually, this is a very blurry thing, right? Everybody thinks something else, but what you can say about identity is basically it always consists of two things. One thing is an identifier that could be your face, for example. It identifies you by making you different from others. When I look at a different face, then I see there's a different person. So this identifies you. And this is, per definition, decentralized in the physical world because it's your face and some genes, and you made it. And there was no government, no company giving you face to you. So this is per se decentralized in the physical world. And then this is not your identity, it's just an identifier. Your identity is much more. It's where you studied, it's like if you can drive a car, it's where you live, which nationality you are, and all that stuff. This brings together your identity. And those identity fragments, they are actually represented by credentials. And those credentials are issued by trusted entities. So there's a government which gives you your identity card or your passport. There's a driver's license department which gives you your driver's license. There's a university which gives you your university diploma. There's the public library which gives you the library card. So all those things are basically trusted entities, and they link in a very clever way, actually, your identifier to the credential that they issue. They just put your name on it, or they put your face on it, picture of your face. And this is how you can go and present one of those credentials to someone, and if they trust the issuer of this credential, then they can actually trust you because there's your face on it. And that's totally great, actually, because it's absolutely frictionless, because the issuer of the credential is not part of the identity transaction. If I go to a bar and I have to be like 18 to get in and show my driver's license, the driver's license department will never find out which bar I went to. This is great. This is great privacy because I decide as a user, who will I show my credential to? Why will I show it, and which part will I show? I can even put my thumb over the driver's license so that the barman doesn't see my name, because he doesn't need to see my name. He just needs to see the picture and he needs to see my date of birth. That's enough. This is what we call selective disclosure. So this is actually a great process. And then if we look at the internet, we see that all the data, including the identifier, is actually held by Facebook. This is quite not so private because they can do with my credentials whatever they want. They can show them to others. And they obviously don't even show them to me. They show them just to others. This is not great. And in the physical world, I have my wallet full of credentials, which all bear my name or my picture. And I choose where to show it, when to show it, and which part of my identity actually I want to disclose to others. So what led us to build KILT is actually, let's try to bring this model from the physical world into the digital world. And this happens in two ways, basically. So first of all, you need to have a possibility to create this identifier yourself and not by talking to a service. So you need a piece of software which you have to install on your computer or your phone or whatever, and this produces your identifier first of all. So this, of course, has a private and the public part. The public part is your address, basically. It's a picture of your face, and then you have the private part where you can sign with, so to make sure that you actually did something. And then on top of that, we build so-called verifiable credentials, which is a standard. Verifiable credentials are actually credentials which you request from a trusted entity. So you go to a trusted entity and say, hey, I passed my driver's license test. can I please have a driver's license? Then they will ask you for a picture of your face, obviously, and then they attach the picture of your face to this credential, then they sign the credential, and then they send it back to you. Now it's yours, and you choose where you show it, when to show it, and it is stored on your computer. It's not stored on the database of the driver's license department, right? And this reproduces actually the cool things that we had in the physical world for the digital world. And this is what KILT is all about.
Got it. Thank you for that. Let me just try to re-break that down. So ultimately, you are creating an identifier that we can use in the real world that's not just staying in a place with us not even having the ability to see where it all is living, what all we're choosing to share. Prime example of a Facebook. Once we kind of go in their service, they kind of track and watch everywhere that we go and then use all that information to share it back to potential advertisers. But in a place like KILT, just like going to get your driver's license and whatnot, once you go and get it, now it's yours. And unless you go somewhere and someone is trying to prove your identification, no one can just immediately go get it. There has to be a reason or a ping for that type of information to be gathered in the first place.
Exactly. Unless you publish it. Of course, you can publish it, then there might be use cases for that as well. But in the normal case, it's first of all yours. Right? You can also publish your passport on your website if you like. That's also possible, of course.
Right. Hopefully someone wouldn't do that, but you have the opportunity to definitely do that. So, okay, so we have the basis of what KILT is, which is to help with creating that identifier. But I believe you can also come on here and use your SDK to build applications on top of that. Can you kind of explain how that works?
Yeah, that's the thing that maybe I forgot that in the bio. In the beginning, I also worked in open source for quite a while. I was board member of the Drupal Association, so I'm pretty much open source infected. And I also looked at the business models behind open source. And that's quite interesting because open source, when you look at Linux and Drupal and WordPress and all those guys, actually it works a little bit different than what we have in blockchain. In blockchain, it's also open source, of course, but the business models are different. When you look at the successful big open source projects, actually, they normally have a very small core team of people maintaining the thing, the core, and then there's a lot of people out there who actually contribute to that. And this people, so in Drupal, for example, it's 20 people or so controlling the system, and then you have 70,000 people out there contributing to the software. And 70,000 people won't contribute if they don't get paid. So the 20 people obviously can't pay the 70,000. That wouldn't be possible. And as the software has no license fee, also the software is not going to pay them. So how does it work? Actually, it works by building business opportunities around that. And this is where open source is really, really good. And this is what we try to be as well. So there's tons of opportunities how you can build on top of KILT, how you can be part of the community and do something useful. And this useful thing you sell then as a piece of software or with a license or whatever, or as an attester who has trust and issues credentials. So there's many, many more opportunities to make money around that. And when you do that, then you're probably somehow successful. And when you're successful, other people will see, wow, that's great, actually, can I do it myself? And then you will have lots of small companies emerging from that. And this is how the open source normally works. And this is exactly what we want to have with KILT. We want integrators who have already contacts to their, little small software companies who work for, auto manufacturers or for publishers or whatever you like. So they have the customers already. We want them to integrate or to build software on top of KILT and sell it per hour, sell it per license. We don't really care. But in the end, they will be grateful for having the KILT thing below there, and they will not give us money. We will never take a share, but they will give us part of the software and contribute back to KILT. And this is how the community actually grows. And if we manage to build a striving community of lots of people who are happy building on top of KILT, this thing is just going to grow. This is what we are looking for.
No doubt. And it's a solid model. And just like you said, I appreciate you breaking that down, because I myself have been very curious about some open source of like, all right, how do the originators ultimately find a way to monetize and whatnot? But to your point, it sounds like there's when you create so much and add so much value to other people, and you have this valuable ecosystem, and you can have some of that data knowledge and whatnot, there's things that you can use and do with it. So definitely appreciate you breaking that down. And another direction I want to go real quick is I believe you had like 2 major announcements that came out. I want to start with one. Y'all are officially decentralized. Can you explain what that means and why it's a big deal?
I think it's a really big deal nowadays, because you see some blockchain projects out there, especially when you look at past like Bitcoin and Ethereum, that was naturally decentralized. So it was of course you're doing blockchain, you have to decentralize. Over the last years, we saw some projects which were rather, let's say, private blockchains or not really permissionless blockchains, and those things are not really decentralized then, because they have someone who has to take, who's in the center and who makes the software and all that stuff, which has use cases, no doubt about it. But it is just a fancy database in my eyes. And so I think decentralization moved a little bit away from our focus in the last year, or from the focus of the blockchain community. But it is the actual purpose of the blockchain stuff, right? So it's there.
Exactly.
And this is why we are actually quite keen to actually do everything to be really decentralized. And there's many aspects to that. So first of all, you have to have shared security with another network, which is totally permissionless and public, or you have to do it yourself. That's one point. The next point, that we achieved that by connecting to Kusama, which is part of the Polkadot world. And we went to those so-called slot auctions and won one of the slots. So we are part of the shared security of the Kusama network. So this is decentralization step one. And then, of course, you need people who actually run your blockchain, right? You shouldn't do it yourself on your own computer, because that would be pretty centralized. And you shouldn't have just 5 friends who do that, but it should be open and permissionless, and everyone should be able to join there, which is the second part. This is our collator network, which we set up. And then the third part, which just happened last week, and that's the full decentralization, then, is giving up control over the software. So any changes that are being made in the future are not determined by us, they are determined by the community. So there's voting mechanisms on there, and everyone can have an opinion. So everyone who's part of the KILT network can actually say, hey, I want the number of collators changed from 75 to 76 for whatever reason. And then there will be a vote on that, and the whole community can vote on it for a week, and then the decision is made, and the blockchain is automatically updated. So this parameter is automatically changed without anyone laying hands on it. So, and this is an important step, I think, in the life of a blockchain, so that it is actually now owned by the community, which is absolutely great for us, because and it works. That's the best thing about it.
Right. No, it's ideal. And thanks for breaking down decentralization. I know a lot of newbies come in and they kind of are curious about what the difference between like centralized and decentralized. And I think that was a good story of how you got to decentralization and why it's such a big deal. And I agree with you. There's so many newer projects that are going back to being more centralized. And I think it has to do with being able to onboard clients faster. But speed to have like an end user doesn't necessarily pay off in the long run. I think if you keep blockchain at its core of what it was meant to be, which is decentralized, giving the power to the users, giving the power to the community, and doing it in a safe and secure way that really gets the community more involved and feels like they have a hand in the game, and because they're truly part of being able to make the decisions, which I think is absolutely incredible. So
when you look at things like identity, so identity is potentially dangerous if you have a lot of data in it, right? This is what we see with the Facebooks and others right now. And if you're out there to make it better, then you actually can't build a company which owns all the data or controls the network where all the data is in, right? It needs to be decentralized. Otherwise, it's getting dangerous again, and maybe if it's successful, even more dangerous than Facebook in the end, because there's not only the user's data but also machine data and all that stuff. Think of IoT devices. If that's all in the KILT network and then somebody controls this thing, that would be terrible, actually. So when you do something which might be important for the world, then you have to take care that it is fully decentralized. Otherwise, you are just not better than the Facebooks.
Right. And thanks for making that distinction. Something that you brought up a second ago that I want to go back for a quick second. You brought up the fact that you have a parachain with Kusama. Can you just explain what that is and why that's also another big deal, and how parachains help with creating more and more of that community?
Yeah, so the idea of parachains is quite genius, I would say. It wasn't my idea, but it's quite good because another thing that we see, especially around Ethereum and some Ethereum clones, is that everyone uses the same blockchain basically, and they put a smart contract into it, and then if the smart contract is CryptoKitties, then everything breaks down because there's too much traffic on the network, and if it's not CryptoKitties, the price of the gas price goes up and down, and it's just because it's congesting the network because everyone uses the same network. The idea behind Polkadot and Kusama is that everybody actually builds their own blockchain, and they are purpose blockchains. So they do one thing well, but they don't do everything. So KILT does not have smart contracts. It just has DIDs, decentralized identifiers, and verifiable credentials. There's nothing else there. There's nothing you can do with KILT, only this thing. But it's its own blockchain. It's not a smart contract running on another system. It's its own blockchain. And so this blockchain derives the security and also communication features from a so-called relay chain. And those relay chains are Kusama and Polkadot. So you want to connect to one of those relay chains, and then you produce blocks in your blockchain, and then you send every single block over to the relay chain, and they make an audit on the block if it actually fits the last block. And nothing bad has happened, and then they approve it, and then they send it back, and then you don't need extra security in your system. So that's quite attractive because, of course, this is also forming an ecosystem because it's terribly easy to speak with or to interact with other blockchains in this ecosystem. There's many like Moonbeam, like Arcala, and all those guys who are doing a great job. One of them is doing smart contracts. One of them is doing more finance. We are doing identity, and it all fits together to a great system, which is never congested because it's tens of blockchain, maybe dozens of blockchain, maybe hundreds of blockchains in the end, which are running in parallel, and they all do their job, and they are communicating through this relay chain mechanism, which makes it easy for us to collaborate. Of course, very frictionless. It's also building a great ecosystem, which can be really valuable, I think, in the future because it's completely transparent what's happening there. So it's great to be there, but there's only limited places. So the chain cannot do thousands of parachains today. So there's a mechanism that the owners of the Kusama or the dot coins actually vote on who's going to be the next parachain. So who do they want inside their network? They value that probably on different things, but one of them is obviously, can it be useful for the network? And then they use their coins, the dots and the Kusamas, to vote on who's next in. And well, we have been voted on, which is cool. And now we're part of its family.
No, that's awesome. And thank you for breaking down parachains. I think that's a really, really, really cool distinction because it immediately solves the major issue that a lot of people who are in crypto, most of you who are dealing with Ethereum and dealing with any of the coins or dealing with any of the NFTs and understanding how much you're spending in gas and why that's happening and how parachains can help solve that, because each of these blockchains, each of these ecosystems has a part to play, but they don't jam up the system, which is amazing and helps with scalability and helps with everything else. Because as you think about the entire crypto ecosystem, as we continue to grow, we're still very small. I believe last number I saw, it's like 1.5% of the world is in crypto or something like that, which is absolutely nothing. So if we just went to 5% all of a sudden, the system would get fried. We could not handle that type of load. And it's ecosystems like Adad Kusama and some of these others that are spinning these parachains up and making sure that there's layer 1 and layer to scalability is being fixed is what's going to help make these interactions and these transactions faster, smoother, and make it pleasant for all these newcomers who aren't necessarily as proficient in the old days of crypto blockchain and speed with everything else. So I really definitely appreciate you breaking that down. I think it's important for people to understand the parachain distinction. So thank you for that. But I'll tell you what, man, you have dropped a significant amount of great knowledge on us, and you definitely got us excited to learn more about KILT. But before we wrap this up, I got two final fun questions to wrap up with you with. The first being, with all the information and knowledge you have right now, if you go back to yourself when you first learned about blockchain back in 2015, or back when you were first starting this company, KILT, what are one or two pieces of wisdom you would give yourself as you started this journey?
Well, the first would probably be think of congesting blockchains. I'm so amazed about the smart contracts. Probably that would have been something I would have told myself. That's the one thing. The other thing. Be prepared that identity is more complex than you thought. It took us almost a year to dig down in every aspect of identity and to model a system that we could actually start building. So it was. I thought it would be much easier. Like you can call this person A and this person B, and then you finish. No, it's not. It's much more complex, and there's a lot of things to think about. But that's it was fun. So I wouldn't even tell me. No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, but you bring up a really good point of like, some people get so caught up in the world of crypto because everything moves so fast. Same thing with blockchain. Everything's moving so fast that it takes time to build things. It takes time to build companies. And with you being, being in multiple industries, startups, et cetera, you know that things just aren't built overnight. And I really am fascinated by companies who are willing to put in the time and understand that, like, hey, this is going to take a few years to build out, but when we have it, we're going to have a fully functioning product that people can use and be able to move quickly on top of, which I think is great, because unfortunately you have a lot of projects that are raising money, promising the moon, the sky, and the stars, and initially once they are out to the world, they don't have anything, and now they're spending the next 2 or 3 years building instead of vice versa. And so I think it's really cool, the approach of like, even though it took you a year to really think through every single scenario of like, what does identity look like? When you were able to start building on top of that, I know it's benefited you, because now you are able to move a lot faster. You have something way more secure. And the fact that you got onto a parachain, again, speaks volumes of what the Kasama and Polkadot community think of y'all. So congratulations, keep up the great work. And the final thought that I want to leave with you, and final question rather, is what is a final thought that you want to leave with all of our listeners here today?
So just maybe the thought that I just got from you in your last sentences is probably that if you're building something in blockchain, it's not only engineers that you need. You should look around you and look about your legislation, about regulators and all that. You might need a lawyer in your company to actually guide you the right way to do things which are not illegal and stuff like that. That's really, really important, because if you want to not do something like, something really crazy, which is a moonshot and then explodes, if you want to build something sustainable, you have to look around you. It's really important that you think about every single step that you make. That's very necessary. It's also really necessary that you have communication around you. It's not enough to just build some cool memes. Communication is more than that. You have to write things so that people understand them, right? You have to have good documentation around what you do. You should follow standards if they are applicable somewhere, and you should have people who can build network, because it's not you alone. It's always when you think about how Web3 moves now, it's hundreds of companies in there. They're all doing different things, most of them doing great things actually, and they understand it's not me, it's us. And I think you have to start partnering and partnering with the same people. There's people out there which you don't want to partner with because they are criminals. And as I said, let's be careful who you speak with, who you partner with, and so those things are, I think, important if you build companies which are in the blockchain space. So don't rush it. Take care about the whereabouts.
No doubt. I think that's a great final thought for everyone building in this space. It's okay to move slowly if it means you're doing it correctly and you're protecting yourself and you're protecting all of those who you're bringing on board to come on you with your journey to hopefully build the next greatest crypto or blockchain project in the space.
Do security audits on your software. Don't just build something and put it out there and see if it works. That's not nice for the people.
For sure. No, we'll definitely appreciate that. But again, Ingo, appreciate your time. What are ways that people can connect with you and learn more about KILT?
Well, we do have a Telegram site, as far as I know. We do have Twitter. It's all KILT Protocol, basically. So we have a website. It's kilt.io. Very good starting point for thinking, for connecting with us. If you want to develop, I think that's the most important thing. Also go to dev.kilt.io, where you find all the developer documentation that you need to start building great things on top of KILT. I think those are the most important.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, Ingo, thank you again so much for spending some time with us. And for everyone listening, stay cryptocurrent.